Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas visiting with Rose Kinzel this morning. She's from Caritas, Carroll County's domestic violence shelter. Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, Rose, the name Caritas, very interesting. What does that mean?
Yes, Caritas is Latin for charity, and the name of the shelter is the Caritas House.
And give us a little bit of a history. I don't think many of us consider Carroll County as being a place where domestic violence would be very prevalent. That's a wrong impression, isn't it?
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, domestic violence is everywhere. It's just more or less whether it's visible or not. Caritas House has been in Carroll County for about 15 years now. It was started by Sister Annunziata, who is a member of the Sisters of the Good Shepherd from Carroll County, and it has been, that mission has been carried on since then. And I've recently come on board as the executive director in April of 2015. So I've been there for a little over a year, and we are in the process of transitioning the shelter from a part-time charity staffed solely by the sisters to a full-time, fully staffed professional domestic violence shelter.
And you focus primarily on women?
Well, we are open to any victim of domestic violence, male or female, regardless of, race or gender identity or anything, handicap, everything. We will take anyone who is a victim of domestic violence.
Let's talk about that term domestic violence. There are many different meanings and I think some confusion as to exactly what it is. Can you help us clear that up?
Sure. In the Ohio Revised Code definition, there are 3 points, and each point states causing physical harm or knowingly cause harm or the imminent danger of physical harm. That's the legal definition, but we know that the social definition goes it's much broader than that. It's a pattern of behavior, coercive as well as assaultive. This could include, physical abuse, which probably most people think of when they hear domestic violence. But it's much broader than that. There are psychological attacks. There are, economic coercion. There can be social, and relationship types of inhibitions. There's, physical, sexual. There's all sorts of patterns of behavior where an abuser can control and try to manipulate their victim.
You said those words a couple of times, control, manipulation. That seems to be the crux of it?
Yes. This, as we know, it's not caused by, it's not a relationship problem. Domestic violence is not an anger management problem. It is about control and power. And there are a lot of ways that someone seeking control can, try to manipulate their, the target of their manipulation. They
Tell
can
us
use
some of
sure.
those.
They can use intimidation. They can, make threats. Gestures. They can smash things. Display weapons. They can use emotional abuse. They can put people down. Verbal abuse, just always calling them names and saying, you're ugly and nobody loves you. They isolate people. They cut them off from just social contacts. They cut them off from their family because, we have to have a support system. And limiting someone's support system is a way to control them. They can use the children, if there's children involved, playing the kids against each other. There's a lot of economic abuse. Say the checking accounts are all in the abuser's name, the house is in his name, the car is in his name, limiting their transportation, taking the car keys, or sometimes sabotaging the vehicle so they can't leave, or marking the tires so they know that if the tire is not in the exact place when they come home from work, that there's going to be a price to pay.
Well, let me stop you there. What wife would put up with that? Well, if you're talking about someone marking tires or saying I control all the money, so you have no economic freedom in this marriage whatsoever. It seems like no one would dive into a marriage that way. This must increase incrementally, or at what point do you get to a place where that seems okay, where I have to stay home because he marks the tires? Why on earth wouldn't a person leave?
Right. It would be simple, wouldn't it, if you were going to enter a marriage and your partner said, I love you today, but in 10 years, I'm going to beat you so badly you're going to be in the hospital.
Yeah, no one's going to do
Right.
that.
We're not going to do that, right? So that's a good point. It builds. It slowly escalates. And where there is a level of, I guess, not so much comfort, but just you're used to that. And then it escalates a little bit more. And then you become used to that. And then it escalates a little bit more.
So this starts to feel normal to someone?
Yes, absolutely.
Marking the tires in the driveway.
Yes, because often the abuser then uses that psychologically against you, like, well, why are you asking? As if the assumption was that everybody isn't allowed to get on Facebook. Everybody isn't allowed to have their own cell phone. Everybody must ask permission to go to the store and get milk and bread.
Okay, show me where I'm wrong here, because to me this seems like it has a psychological cycle then, that as a person is treated this way, then their self-esteem becomes lower so that they accept being treated this way, which then feeds that being treated this way, and it seems like we're kind of spiraling downward.
Yes, it becomes a cycle. They would call it the cycle of violence. That has been in the media before, but it's a cycle of control where this is very interesting because in the Korean War they did a study about prisoners of war and how they coerced them into giving their information up, and the techniques that were used by the interrogators. When a study was done, I believe it was in Minnesota, they took Biederman's chart of coercion, which came from that study from the Department of Defense, and they placed it on top of symptoms that they found that were being brought up over and over again by battered women, and it was a perfect match. I mean, it was almost a perfect match.
Wow.
So the same techniques that the Army recognizes as very effective ways to coerce someone were the exact same types of techniques that batterers use every day.
I'm going to want to get into their heads in just a little bit, but I do have one more question about, it seems like a woman at her healthiest point would be able to say to a husband, when you talk to me that way, it doesn't make me feel or think less of me, but it sure makes me think less of you. And I think one thing husbands need across the board is respect. So to know that by behaving in this manner, they are eliciting disrespect from their wives, that doesn't help?
Well, everything is rationalized. A good manipulator, or I should say a skillful manipulator, denies the responsibility, projects it very well. Well, it's, you caused me to lose my temper. If you wouldn't talk so much, I wouldn't have to hit you. Things like that. They switched subjects very well. They have sometimes an all or nothing type of thinking. I remember even from my own personal experience, if I didn't agree 100% with my abuser, he would say that he knew then I didn't love him. I must be in perfect agreement.
Whoa.
I mean, what kind of a marriage has perfect agreement?
Right. One of you is not necessary if two people agree on everything.
Sure.
Okay. Let's get into the profile, because is there a way? You said at a wedding, no one says, okay, 10 years from now, this is how it's going to be. Are there any kind of actions or behaviors to watch for in the dating period that might show that a person is prone to go down this path?
Yes, actually, when I go to speak with middle school girls and high school girls, there are, we call them red lights and green lights. Do they control, and it goes along with that, do they control all the money in the relationship? Do they control your friends? Because in middle school and high school, friendships are very important. Do they limit who you can talk to and who you can't? Do they, pout and have, temper tantrums if you don't do exactly what they say? Are they always watching you? Are they always checking up on you? If you don't feel like you have the freedom to just breathe and be yourself.
Wow.
And maybe say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to hang out with my friends this weekend. If that becomes a problem, then yes, I would say those are definitely red lights. And, the word says that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom.
Yes.
And I believe that life here on earth is like freedom training for heaven, because when we get to heaven, we have the ultimate freedom. Mm-hmm. And if you're asking for freedom in a relationship and that's not going to work and that's a cause of problem, the saying is that, if you love someone, let them free, right? Mm-hmm. Because I believe it's the same with us. Father God loves us so much, he lets us choose.
Yeah.
Does he not offer the gift of his son? And it's up to us whether we take it. No one is forced to accept Jesus. No one. It's the same thing in this relationship.
Right.
If your relationship is becoming where you don't have a choice and where you don't get to say, you know what, I want to take a weekend off. I just want to chill. Mm-hmm. If that becomes a problem, then it's not free. Mm-hmm. And the only way Father God knows if we love him truly or not is if we have all these other choices, but yet we say, you know what, I want you. And we choose him.
I think what's wonderful, one of the things that you're doing is talking to young people, mm-hmm. teaching them how to do healthy dating, how to be on the alert for this kind of behavior so that they don't become victims. I also think there are probably some, in this case, young men who don't want to become mm-hmm. abusers as well, but mm-hmm. they may have seen that pattern in their own family growing up. Perhaps that's the way dad treated mom or vice versa. What can be done to prevent in that way?
Well, I think honest dialogue mm-hmm. in an environment that is not patronizing, that is not irrelevant. I mean, I see so many people trying to reach young people today where they're coming from, they're just not up with the times. You know what I mean? They're using old language, they're using old examples. They're not relevant for the days that we live in. So I think engaging them in relevant, talk about Facebook, talk about Instagram, talk about Twitter. Okay, talk about these things where, when you put a photograph out, it doesn't come back. Right. Those kinds of things. I am so glad I did not grow up when Facebook was around. Mm-hmm. I mean, high school was hard enough, wasn't it? But yet these are all the things that are now challenging, my own kids.
Yeah.
And so I think being relevant, showing them what it looks like, even just the awareness like on Facebook where you have to turn off the tracking, because if you don't want to be found, then you need to turn off that locator. And we don't even think about it, do we?
Right.
Our phones automatically, for advertising purposes, they're capturing the data. They want to know what you're looking at so that they can send you an appropriate advertisement. Mm-hmm. Well, that all has to do with geolocating, and everybody's into everybody's business.
Yeah. Yeah. And to protect your privacy, to be dating a young man who promises to not use a picture in such a way, and then there it is out there, that can be extremely hurtful.
Yes.
We're speaking with Rose Kinzel. She's from Caritas House. What services does Caritas provide for those who have been abused?
Yes, we are a secure, safe location. We have 24/7 security, 24/7 staff. We offer emergency shelter, which includes free room and board for any victim of domestic violence. We like to say that, anyone can come for a week or two. And what we do is we have you sit down with our victim's advocate who kind of goes over your situation, sees what you've been through, what you want to go towards. We don't recommend that people stay in this victim's mentality for very long because, after a while, you stop becoming a victim and now you're a volunteer. And so we need to facilitate, them to move forward and say, identify, okay, this is where I need to go. I need to get my own checking account. I need to get my own place. I need to get my legal papers in order. I need to do this. That will preserve their safety and will help them grow and, and get their own identity back.
Mm-hmm. We've got to take a break. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.